The idea of mind, body, soul harmony, whether it's physical health, mental, emotional, spiritual, in a sense, all three have to work
Sure.
together.
Hello and welcome to the James Granstrom podcast, Super Soul Model Series, where I help people tune and tap in to their natural state of well-being. This week, we are blessed to have our guest, who is Dimitri Moraitis. And Dimitri is the co-founder and executive director of the Spiritual Arts Institute, alongside Barbara Martin. And he is an accomplished teacher, spiritual healer, and author of many books, including Change Your Aura, Change Your Life, and Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution. Dimitri's mission is to help people find their spiritual path and understanding and development. So I just wanted to say welcome to the show, Dimitri.
Oh, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
So Dimitri, you've been involved in spirituality and you've had the Spiritual Arts Institute, is it almost for like 20 years now? Is that correct?
Yes. We had a precursor. Basically, we started the organization in 2000. It became a nonprofit
Yeah.
in 2005. But I've been studying metaphysics for about 40 years, and Barbara's been studying for her whole life of 50, 60 years. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
spirituality, so one of the things I love to share with my guests is, we're a triad of well-being, the
Right.
mind, the body, and the soul. And all
Yeah.
of those three things, all of those aspects, when you get them in tune, what happens is you thrive. And that's what I accidentally stumbled across in my journey. And when you're talking about spirituality and the soul, I'm really intrigued how your journey began, because it's quite a fascinating journey into setting up something like the Spiritual Arts Institute, which is
Right.
very big in
Right.
California. But how did you get into spirituality, and how would someone on their path begin to awaken? What was your awakening?
Yeah, but first maybe just comment. You're absolutely right. We're not just a body. I think that's the first thing we have to realize. We are a soul inhabiting a body. So yes, you want your car to work well, but you want even the driver to do better.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's really about the soul. And then of course the mind is the navigator. So the idea of mind, body, soul harmony, whether it's physical health, mental, emotional, spiritual, in a sense, all three have to work
Sure.
together. So the problem is in today's world, we do tend to segmentize things. We just think, and now not only do we now just think about the body, we just think about the biology of the body and the chemistry of the body, and we forget there's all these other parts working together. So you can have a chemically functioning body, but not a happy soul.
Yeah.
Now, in my case, I was born into a Greek family, Dimitri, and my father was a doctor, interestingly enough. My mother was very much in the arts. So I was getting this kind of scientific, creative together, but I was leaning more to the arts. I was a classical pianist and a musician, but also a filmmaker. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go into the arts. And it was actually going very well and at that time, but I was having what I call these inspiration moments. I didn't know what metaphysics was. If you're born Greek, you're basically born Greek Orthodox. So we went through the traditional things, but we were not really religious. And in arts, you are always looking for that thing you can't put your finger on. That's the magic. And so I was already used to that kind of attitude, but these moments just kept getting stronger and stronger. And then it led to a very dramatic opening for me. I call it my Saul on the road to Damascus moment.
Right.
But even then, I didn't know what the name of it was. I just knew I had experienced this heightened, just being in this beautiful other place. And it just changed me. It wasn't like a moment. And then when I realized it was metaphysics, I couldn't get enough of it. So I was studying everything I could get my hands on.
So was it
For
just something that just accidentally you stumbled across,
Oh
or
yeah, no, I didn't make it
image
happen.
or a
I did not
feeling?
make it happen. I know
Right.
many have asked, well, how do you have a spiritual awakening? You don't have it. It happens to you.
Sure.
You cannot direct that. Now, for some people, it's gradual.
Yeah.
We have, oh, I've been spiritual my whole life. As a little kid, I was thinking about it, but even then, it isn't until you actually start doing something about it, right? Because even as a kid, you can see things or have experiences and you just see it as part of your childhood. But when you realize, wait a minute, this is something I have to become part of, the God knocking on the door kind of a thing,
Sure.
that's the turning point. So whether it's a gradual ascent to that moment or a dramatic one, because others have had dramatic, like Barbara, she was basically born clairvoyant, right? So it was from a very early age with her.
So she could
Um,
see colors, she could see
yeah, at
the
3 years
angels.
old.
I
Yeah.
mean,
So
what
let's
could she
get
see?
so here I am a year after I've had this awakening, and but I was careful about, I was in Los Angeles at the time pursuing movies, and Los Angeles is a great place for spiritual studies, and
Oh,
so I was able to be exposed to things that taught me a lot. But I was careful about joining a group. And then a friend of mine, she said, "Oh, there's this woman having a dinner and she's going to do a meditation. I know you like all this metaphysical stuff." And so I went, and it was Barbara. And Barbara's like a generation older than me. She's the greatest generation. And boy, she has a lot of stories about that era. Um, and I realized, well, it was the first time I meditated, and I felt like I'd stepped into an ancient, like an ancient door opened up again.
right.
And then for one conversation with her, and I thought, I had so much on my mind, I did kind of pour my heart out. And she was saying, I would thought it was a nice conversation. She said, "You really interrogated me that first night," but I could tell she was talking from her experience. And then I said that night, "Okay, this is the one I have to study with." Now,
Right.
a real quick note on Barbara. Yeah, now she was born Depression era in the United States. And that's her father was
Like 1930s, is it? Is that right? Or
yeah, yeah,
1920s?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And she was born her father was a Greek Orthodox priest and a builder of churches. He was an architect. And in those days, it was a family she had 6 kids in the, a family of 8 living on $80 a month. It was a struggle, and they kept moving around from city to city because as soon as he built up the church, they'd send him somewhere else. But very early on, she started having these, she could start seeing auras, and she could start seeing, by 8 years old, she was seeing angels, and all these other things were starting to happen, but she didn't know what any of it meant until, she said, "Well, I knew if there was a discordant energy, that was not a good thing." And it wasn't happy sometimes seeing this because if my parents were arguing, you could see the disturbing energy that was going on between them, not just the verbal argument. It never not got anything beyond that. Um, but at 11 years old, when they were in Kansas City, Missouri, she met a woman that could, basically called her in one day. She was teaching acting, and she ran an acting company, and Barbara was part of it as 11-year-old. And when Dorothy calls her in and says basically to little Barbara, "You can see the aura, can't you?" And Barbara's jaw dropped. She said, "Is that what it's called?" Again, they didn't
Right.
have a name for it then. It says, "I can see it too, and I want to share with you some of my gifts." And that was her first training on the auric field. Then she went to California too in the golden age of Hollywood. She met people like Cecil B. DeMille and things like that. Um, and she thought she was going to go in entertainment, but then it segued into metaphysics as well. And so she started a beautiful career with that. Studied with another great mystic in LA. And then when we met, first I started as her teacher, as her student, very happy, and we both loved to write, so we always started writing right away. But then we realized, at that time, Barbara just had a slew of notes and just inspirations. So we got to organize all this. And also, there was more to bring in. And so that started the Institute. But what I didn't realize was also she was training me to be a teacher. I didn't initially see that as my road. I knew writing was going to be, but then I took to it. And then then we moved down here we're in Encinitas, kind of near San Diego, which is a
Yeah. Southern
beautiful area,
California.
Southern California, yeah. And opened up the center, and we've been doing these video things long before the Zoom era started.
Well, that's
So
great.
yeah,
I mean, you can get all this information out there. I guess one of the things I wanted to sort of just, help the audience with, just guide them. You were talking a lot about the word metaphysics. What is that? So, in a
yeah.
simple
So
layman's,
it's
what is metaphysics?
after,
Somebody,
okay,
yeah,
physics, which means physical. So
yes,
meta after physics. So the idea is what lies beyond the physical world. The whole
right,
foundation of metaphysics is you are a spiritual being in a physical world. You are not a physical being. So the
sure,
material scientists would say we're just atoms bouncing around and energy. That's all we are, and it's just how it all kind of randomly comes together. That's not the philosophy of metaphysics.
sure.
So
I mean,
the
in
yeah,
quantum physics, like it shows that nothing is random. And in Kirlian photography, it can just show you that there's energy coming off your body. And if we look in the pictures behind you on the right hand side, if you're looking at your video on your left hand side, You've got a picture
Right.
of
Those are the Theosophists painted those beautiful
they're
pictures. And
beautiful. Yeah. So I've had Kirlian photography or Kirlian photography, which I believe is named after the gentleman who created it. He found that there's certain colors that were emanating from the body when you took the picture, you took the photo. And if you're clairvoyant, you can see them. Or if you take a picture with this Kirlian photography, you can see this. But if you don't have that vision, you won't be able to see it. But what
well,
I've
the point is
noticed,
we all have the potential
you will
for
have
being
potential.
clairvoyant. Okay. But our work, the motto of our organization is helping souls grow.
Sure.
So what we're really focused on is not what we call the phenomena of experience, but the evolution. Earth is a school. We are here, our soul is here to learn to grow. And everybody's growing, but if you've had that awakening, which I'm sure many of your viewers must have to be
Yeah.
watching your podcast, then that's the call to action. You're meant to do something with that awakening because this is your accelerated lifetime. This is where you can make, we're talking about a quantum leap in your evolution, but you've got to pursue it. It's not going to happen by itself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, like I'd like to say I woke up
There
about
you go.
20 odd years ago in
Okay.
suffering. And I was
Well, that's
asking, who am
and
I? Why
folks,
am I here? What's my purpose? Is there anything else? It sounds all funny when I look back on it. And that's why, and I'm writing a book right now. And
oh,
I
great.
love thinking about like Shakespeare, how he said life is but a comedy of errors. And I was like, this guy is out of his mind, but he's right on track because you can fast forward and laugh at it. But during that experience, it feels really heavy. It
Of
feels really,
course.
it,
Yeah.
but when I cast my mind back, I can laugh at it and go, this is like a cosmic joke, and I'm being guided to something greater. Yet it doesn't feel like that when I'm in the midst of an experience. So I'm thinking of the audience, wherever they're at, or, if someone's listening and on their journey, say that there's been this awakening. What do they do with it now? And what are the best things to prepare themselves to evolve as a human being and be the best version of themselves right now?
Right.
Mind, body, and soul.
Right. No, that's crucial because, unfortunately, it's true. Sometimes we awaken in suffering because sometimes the soul has to be stirred
Yeah.
to its core before it starts to say, "Oh, I get it." This is not an easy journey. We look at the hero's journey in any story told. They never get there easy, right? Oh, okay, you just got to drop this ring in a lava pit. Okay, and 3 movies later it's done, or the 3 books later it's done. The journey can be, I don't want to say excruciating, but it can be very demanding.
Yeah.
But metaphysics is that way. It does tend to demand more than you have to give, but also gives back more.
Right.
So the expression is what you give to God, you get back 10 times over.
That's a
So,
lovely little thing to say.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I like to see it as a warrior. You got to be like this warrior of light, as Paulo Coelho says, or Dan Millman says. The peaceful warrior. This spiritual path. You've got to be. You've got to be a ninja, right?
strong. You gotta be
You've got to
strong.
come
Well,
from.
look, one
You
of the greatest.
don't think that it's going to be, a smooth, easy journey.
Oh, no,
It
no. Well,
requires
the greatest.
something, a force beyond what you thought was physically human, right? And that I believe that's
Right,
your soul being awake and saying, I'm being called into
right,
into something. Like in my case, it was like death of a parent or my own near-death experiences or relationships or whatever. And you're just thinking, my golly, this is really being pulled from me. But from that, something beautiful, a phoenix is rising out of those ashes. And that's your soul awakening or evolving. I don't know
right.
what, from your experience and, the people that you've been helping, I mean, how does that relate to what you know about spirituality?
Right. Well, everybody comes in their own way. Yes, it could be the death of a loved one, because it changes your worldview. How will I go on? Or how, or out of, if you had a near death, for sure there's a great beyond because you've been there.
But
It's
that's not for
not
everyone. Not
question.
everyone's going to have that, right? They're going to have
Yeah,
different
no, not at
traumas.
all. Not at all. Nor
And
do they.
I don't
But
want to, I
however
don't,
it approaches you, the result is more or less the same. It's a profound awakening. But the most important thing is don't just sit on it. Do something about it. It's not accidental that you had this awakening. So you're supposed to pursue it. Now, everybody's journey is different. We talk about a spiritual potential. All right. Now, I could have stayed in movies and had this spiritual awakening or become a piano. That could have been my path. In my case, not only was I meant to pursue this personally, I was meant to pursue it professionally. Barbara tells a great story of meeting Cecil B. DeMille, one of the great filmmakers. And when she met him face to face, she noticed he had the mystic sight. He could see into the mystic realms too, but that's not in any book. It's not in any biography. It wasn't his mission to do that. It was his mission to take that knowledge and put in things like the Ten Commandments or a movie that practically killed him to get made, of the demand of it. Now, for a couple of things, we say there's sort of four basic keys here. Number one, you have to make room for it in your life. If you are saying, I'm too busy to meditate, I'm too busy for everything, this, that, and the other, it ain't going to happen either. Just like if you've got a new friend or whatever, someone that's important, you got to spend quality time with them, or there's no relationship really.
Sure. So
So
the
make
first
this,
one is you got to make time.
yeah,
Make
you
time
got
for
to
your
make time.
spirituality,
You
or
got to
make
make
time for a practice, or something.
exactly the whole thing. You've got to say, this is like the centerpiece of my life, and that everything is part of it. It's not my spiritual life and my earth life. Okay, my job is part of my spiritual life. My family is part of my spiritual life. My finances are part of my spiritual.
100%.
Every part of it, right? Then and associated with that, now what we always strongly recommend is a meditation practice. We recommend daily meditation, even if it's on the shorter side. But meditation is your one-on-one time with the divine. And if you're not making that time, again, how are you going to build the interconnections? But you don't meditate also all day long. Some people go the other way and say, oh, I'm just going to sit on a mountaintop and just meditate for hours and hours. Well, you've got to apply your meditation. The meditation, I'd like to think of as like gathering up the ammo. But again, the soldier still has to go into battle. But if
Sure.
it's armed, then it's going to be more successful in that battle. Then the other thing that's got to happen is you can't go around, you can't bypass just living a good life. Everything, when in our discussion, we work a lot with the aura. And you build up the aura through meditation, but you also build it up through every good word, thought, act, and deed. You
Sure.
study any tradition, integrity of living is number one. As Barbara would say, if you're going to church on Sunday and you're cheating your partner on Monday, that's not going to work. You
Yeah.
have to live your truth. There are many people that don't even use the word spiritual and are living a far more spiritual life than those that say, oh, yes, I'm so spiritual. But you look at their life, it's not very spiritual.
Yeah.
It's just like a tag. Then the third one, and this is the one I know in today's world, we have a distrust of authority in today's world. It's all self-help. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. You need training. This is an ancient tradition. It goes back to the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, the mystery school days. You cannot cross these. You do your own growing. No one does it for you, but you need skill training. I tell people I could have read every book in the Library of Congress on metaphysics, and I would not have gotten what Barbara has given me through these years, because the tradition is this ancient oral tradition of communicating, but also energetic exchanges that go on. And there's an old expression, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Sure.
Nothing wrong with having a teacher if it's qualified. I know there's a lot of goofies out there that claim, oh, enlightenment and 5 easy steps. Like anything in life, you have to discern what is of value and what is not. And also you want to make sure you're checking your motive. Are you pursuing this just because you want to feel better than others, or you want to prove something, or you really feel a yearning? And then the last one we say is there's going to be transformation. There's going to be a need for healing. We often are going through challenge. No one gets through life without bruising themselves somehow, whether
Yeah, it's
mentally.
just part and parcel.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So don't worry about that. All right. That's part of the journey, but your ability to heal. So one of the most beautiful things of working with people is, old traumas of the past, the difficult things that happened to them, to see that stuff finally start to leave them forever, because if you're stuck to the change of the past, how can you reach the spiritual heights? And
Yeah.
there we tell people, please don't define yourself by what happens in your life, by the events of your life. They may be turning points, like when I met Barbara, that was a turning point. But it's not what's going on in your life that's the measure of your spiritual maturity. It's how you're handling what's happening. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing you want to, in the ancient mystery schools, at the end of the day, they'd have their communal meal together, and then they'd reflect on the day. They would say, okay, how did I perform? How did I handle this situation? And they were honest with themselves. Oh, I got angry here, or I got upset there, whatever it was. And it was a time of self-reflection so that they could learn from their own mistakes.
So essentially, you're evolving by being introspective. You're evolving.
And
I could have
expressive. You have
handled
to
that.
express it. It's
Yeah, I
both.
could
It's
have
both.
handled that
Both.
situation better, or I could have handled that meeting better. I could have handled, that conversation better,
Exactly.
or I could have chosen to eat a bit better, or I,
Yes,
or,
yeah. Yeah.
or I could have chosen to, I chose not to do that workout when in actual fact I've probably been better off if I did.
I was a little lazy. I didn't want to
Skipping
work
some
out.
things instead of, you know, redefining what's really important for you. Like this mind,
Right.
body, and soul thing is really important to me because I first came across the body, which was, in a very egocentric part of way from my work in modeling. I just wanted to get a six pack to start with, right? So I was like, get the six pack. But okay, I got myself in great physical form, but my mind, what was going on there? I was
Right,
like,
right,
my mind is somewhere else. I just don't feel emotionally balanced. So then that led me to sort of having a look, and I was drinking a lot of the time, and I was thinking, golly, I can be in great physical shape, but my mind isn't there. And then it was only when I started learning how to meditate, and this was like over 20 years ago now, I was like, my golly, the mind with the body, and then suddenly the soul goes, hello, how are you? And you're like, whoa, okay.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you start to feel, well, in my case, I started to feel things that I'd never felt before. I started to see colors more
Oh,
vividly.
oh wow.
I started to hear things. I'm very auditory more so than visual. And I started to hear like beautiful sounds more succinctly. And I could pick up beautiful vibes far more clearly. And I was very
Great.
discerning about who I'd hang out with, where I would go, what my environment would be, what I
Right,
would eat.
right,
And like if someone's listening, all of those discernments, as Dimitri was saying, is really really important, I believe, for that soul's evolution. Because if you're not discerning, essentially you can find yourself wound up in some kind of very unusual place that's not for your highest good. But
right, 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 right.
and
Because
yeah.
yeah, no, it's interesting that you had, a lot of people have had in their own way what you described. They reach a level of physical success, let's call it that.
Yeah.
Your case, you had the physique you wanted, or let's say somebody wanted to be the millionaire they wanted to be. Oh, I'll
Sure.
be happy. If I just have $1 million or 10 million or 100 million, whatever it is, I'll be a happy person. And they reach that, and then they discover, wait a minute, I'm the same person I was before. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have accomplished that, but something's still missing.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to we pursue the path from wherever we're at. If I never, I had a comfortable life in Chicago, this in the Midwest, in Illinois, and I had a, good family life, and I could easily made a living in that town, but I got this calling to go make film, which is in that strange town, LA, where, and if I hadn't taken the chance to go there, I wouldn't have met Barbara and I wouldn't have had all the other experiences I had. So I know it sounds corny to say follow your bliss, but it does, when you follow your bliss, it doesn't always take you to the end of your goal, but it takes you to the next step of it. And as long as you keep an open mind, say, okay, you went through this journey of developing yourself this way, you realize, oh, what about the mind? It opened up another door.
Yeah.
But if you hadn't climbed the first mountain, you'd have been still thinking about the first mountain that you're climbing, and you wouldn't have gotten to the second one.
Well, I love your analogy there, but I'd also like to say it's the discipline along the way. So I learned the discipline of how to take care of the body, and then practicing something like
Yeah,
meditation for me, which works for me, like learning how to exercise, learning the right nutrition, and then the discipline to sit down and meditate. Wow, that was a game changer. And then then the next level of that, how are you handling all the rest of your life in integrity? Are
right.
your thoughts, words, and deeds all in alignment? Because that was not me at one point in time, right?
Yeah,
So,
right,
I
right.
really committed to that. But what I wanted to ask you, Dimitri, is If someone's starting out on their spiritual journey right now or have awakened, where would you get them to start? What would you
Um,
get them to be able to say, hey, this is something practical that you could do that would really
well,
help
I
you
would
in your
recommend, I
environment?
mean, again, let's say in our own case of our organization, our first steps are meditating.
Okay,
Get people to meditate. We have, let's say, the 6-week course on Change Your Aura, Change Your Life, our foundation
sure.
book. And if people in 6 weeks, and it's a live course, right? You're actually taking it week after week. If they even get to the practice, I know this sounds easy, but there's your discipline
Right.
here. Even if they get by the end of 6 weeks to meditate daily, that's an accomplishment. Some people have difficulty just literally sitting down, not doing anything physically, but keeping the mind alert and the mind focused and doing that every day. That's a challenge for some people to do that, you know.
Yeah.
But what that does is it starts to reorient your life. Instead of, today, if anything, we're so stimulated by things to do. Oh my God, do this, buy this, think this thing. And we're constantly bombarded. And unless we learn to start to shut that out, it's not going to be successful. So we would recommend starting a meditation practice, but do it diligently. Don't do it happenstance. And I know the two things people often say, oh, I can't concentrate or I don't have time. Well, the time thing, I always like to joke, well, you don't have time for God, you don't have time for the divine. This is your one-on-one time with the divine. So make room for it, and everything else will fall into place. And the other, yeah, if you have the monkey mind, you can't focus your mind. The mind too is like a muscle. It needs to be strengthened. You can learn to focus your mind. Maybe in the beginning you're not focusing very well, but if you stay at it, you can get that mental focus so strong that nothing can, there can be a fire in the house and you could stay single-minded.
Sure.
Those are the two very, very, now in our meditation, we actually do, it's called meditative prayers.
Okay.
So
So what,
combination of,
what would that look like to like an audience member? Give me an
well, yeah, we
example.
would literally, I'd be closing my eyes and I'd be going into a meditative prayer. Prayer part is the petitioning, it's the reaching out.
Right.
So for example, we work with divine light. So I would say, let's say right now, if I needed more confidence, or let's say I need more discipline.
Yep.
I'm not very disciplined. All right, I'd bring in some of that gold energy because in the aura, when you're disciplined, you have a lot of gold light. Nothing's
Okay.
going to shake you. You're not easily, you know, thrown off base. Also, there could be what they call a royal blue energy coming out. And I would actually call on these energies and I'd invite them into my auric field.
What does the royal blue energy do? So gold is
Royal
discipline.
blue,
Royal blue.
well, gold brings in a lot of wisdom. Gold is the most dynamic energy there is.
Okay. Good to know.
When you need dynamic power, when you need confidence, gold is the color to call on.
Sure.
Uh, Royal blue brings in kind of associate determination, loyalty, single-mindedness. So yeah, if you notice you're a little fickle, and that kind of, you're just, oh, I'd like to be the social butterfly or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you can, the royal blue kind of keeps you on track. Barbie used to joke, I would look for that energy in my friends because I knew they'd be loyal. I knew they'd be good friends. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
the true blue color, kind of a thing. So you call on that, but then you have to live it. So the example I like to give is, let's say you need to ask for a raise at your job. It's long overdue. You deserve it, but you just chicken out. You don't go into
So
the
what's the
boss's.
color for that? Is that gold?
Well, the fact that you're not going in there and you're chickening out means that you might be a little afraid.
Okay.
And
So what?
fear shows up as a debilitating gray energy.
Okay.
So when you're afraid, you don't want to do something, it kind of paralyzes you to action, right? The deer in the headlights kind of a thing.
Sure.
So you realize, no, I'm long overdue. I'm going to do this. Then yes, I bring in the gold energy of confidence. And then very shortly after that meditation, I'd walk into that boss's office and say, hey, you know what? I think it's time for a raise.
Cool. So
You
what
get
I
or
think,
not, it's a different thing, but it's
yeah,
your energy. Now, one last note, when you do that, that energy starts to become part of you. And
nice.
then next time it becomes a little easier to do that.
So actually, for the last few weeks or month or so, I've been sort of imagining myself covered in gold energy.
Oh, there you go.
So I've
See?
just been doing it because I was reading about it and I thought, I haven't done that. I'm not that visual, but you know what? I'll do it anyway. And I've
Yeah,
noticed that things have been unfolding in kind of beautiful ways for me.
right.
But I'm thinking about like the audience, right? So if they wanted to have more love, if they've been experiencing any anxiety, what would the
Well,
color
love
be?
comes, well, okay, this is beauty. Each attribute of life has its own energy associated with it.
So,
So if I'm feeling lonely, if I'm feeling unloved, I'd bring in the deep rose pink energy.
okay.
That's the color of love. Or I need more compassion. We had a doctor in one of the classes once. He said, I don't show enough kindness to my patients. I see so many a day in and out, they're like petri dishes, not exactly, but so we brought in the love rate. But then he had to be more kind. And he reported a couple of weeks later, oh my God, my patients are happier than ever. And my practice is getting even busier because he got this reputation.
And he was just
So,
bringing in this pink energy. Was that what he was doing?
but the love, but
Interesting.
then he had to show the compassion.
Sure.
It can't
Because that's the
bring it in.
physical aspect of that energy, right?
Right. That's the expression. You have to express the energy you're calling.
So
You can't
basically,
just med
would I be right in saying, and correct me if I'm wrong here, so when you're bringing in the color, that is like your soul, which is that ethereal aspect of yourself, that presence, and then you have to act it through your body, through your
You
actions.
have to live it. You have to live it. You're
Okay.
calling on it from a source greater than yourself, and you're asking it to bless your auric field. So you literally visualize it in your aura, and then you have to live it. You have to express it.
Now, if you're unwell and you want to be well, what would be the energy to bring that in?
Well, now that's interesting too, because when we're, let's say, physically hurt or sick, again, we think illness is the broken bone, you
Sure,
know. But actually, in consciousness, health is a consciousness first.
sure,
So that's why we don't want to think, the 20th century with the New Thought movement talked about mind over matter. You can literally talk yourself into illness by the way you think.
for sure,
Sue
for
me,
sure.
right? But that was revelatory when it first came out,
Yeah.
right? The idea that that could happen to you. So if I notice that I am in a consciousness, oh, I'm so sick, I feel horrible, I do that.
Mhm.
If I'm starting to go into that consciousness, you want to bring in this beautiful sapphire blue energy.
Sapphire blue. Okay, interesting.
Blue, yeah, the sapphire blue is the healing consciousness to get you starting to think in terms of health. And then again, the law, that's why one of our books is called Change Your Aura, Change Your Life.
Sure.
If it's in your aura, the energy of it, it will show up in your life by divine law, unless you do something to disturb it.
So another thing, let's just talk about wealth, right? So more people want to draw more wealth
Oh,
into.
you're hitting all the big
Yeah,
points.
I'm gonna hit everyone because I want people to go away with something that you have been
Yeah,
studying and practicing and living for
yeah,
years. And you're a master of this. You teach this, right? But
yeah,
a lot of people don't realize that there is this beautiful aspect of themselves, that soul aspect that they could be tapping into, such as in Change Your Aura, Change Your Life, that these things
right,
can make a big difference.
right.
So that's why I'm going to ask all the questions
Yeah, yeah, no,
because,
but
these are the
prosperity is
answers
another
that
big
people
one.
kind of want to hear and, they can get.
Right, right.
So what would be the color of wealth then if they wanted to draw that in?
Well, this is really exciting to think of that wealth has a consciousness, right? Again, we think of wealth as how much money do I have in the bank?
Sure.
No, no, it starts in the consciousness. And in the auric field, you want to have the consciousness of wealth, and that comes through as a turquoise energy.
Turquoise. Very interesting.
Turquoise, right?
Most people would have thought it would be green because that's like the,
Well, there is what they call the Kelly green. That's also another aspect of it. But the turquoise itself is the very consciousness of wealth. So, and by the way, it's not just material wealth. It's a wealth of friendships. We tend to put blinders in ourselves. When a great spiritual healer, Joel Goldsmith, said, we often draw chalk marks around ourselves and we say, no further. We don't, and this is self-imposed.
yeah.
Now, one very quick thing, when I first started with Barbara, I was still in the showbiz world. And at that time, I was very young. It was feast or famine. You were working like crazy or you weren't working at all, right? And I was in that moment of not working at all. And one day, Barbara in her casual mode said, she was looking at my heart center and said, oh, I see this nice turquoise light coming out of you. Wealth, right? Now, at that exact moment, the wealth wasn't manifest, but literally 2 weeks later, I got the most lucrative job offer in entertainment I'd gotten up to that point. So
Amazing.
it was
So,
coming
so,
out, right?
guys, if you're listening, not
Yeah.
only I would want you, encourage you to, read up on Dimitri's work and Barbara's work, because it is absolutely fascinating. But not only to just read it to get something, but to read it to evolve in your consciousness, because that
Exactly.
is exactly what Dimitri has been talking about today. And I really appreciate what you're doing at the Spiritual Arts Institute. And I really appreciate the way that you live your message, Dimitri. And you make it sound so practical and natural and easy. And maybe it is, but you do
It
need to
is. It's a
show up
matter
for
of you
yourself.
have to adapt to it, right? But it's meant to be practical. Metaphysics is meant to be applied.
Yeah.
And one of the things that drew me to this work, and also the way Barbara taught, was the practicality. It wasn't these kind of, just ideas, which can be nice of themselves, but also as you learn to study the aura, you realize a lot of these things have a place in the auric field, and they become very, very real.
I'm fascinated by it all, Dimitri, and like as I evolve within myself and watch some magic and miracles unfold for me, I'm just thinking, if this is happening in my own world, what could it happen to someone who's new on their path?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I so appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. And if there's any last thing you'd like to say, is there anything perhaps you'd like to just say in closing to the audience?
Just if you've had the calling, do everything you can to make your spiritual growth a higher priority in your life. It'll lead you to extraordinary places.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for Dimitri being on our show this week. Dimitri Moraitis, this week's super soul model. Thank you for coming on the show, Dimitri.
My pleasure.